Hello everyone, I'm with Kalem Turner today, who is a specialist palm reader and tarot card reader. Kalem, do you want to start off just describing what it is that you do and sort of painting a picture for people that maybe aren't, fully aware of what you do and things?
Yeah, I feel
Yeah?
like not a lot of people are aware, especially of palmistry. A lot of people
Mm-hmm.
kind of know what tarot is, like they've heard of tarot cards or they've had a tarot card reading, and
Mm-hmm.
I guess the stereotype is kind of like foretelling the future and
Oh,
giving
yeah.
people life advice,
Mm-hmm.
and it does kind of live up to that. I would say palmistry is somewhat kind of in the realms, but it's very, very misunderstood, and that's what I
Okay.
specialize in.
Uh-huh.
There's a lot of kind of superstition around it.
Uh-huh.
And just not a lot of people do it as well. So, not a lot of people kind of understand what it's about.
Mm-hmm.
Palmistry is different from, say, tarot card reading
Mm-hmm.
or psychic reading,
Mm-hmm.
or any other kind of reading, really, and that it's your hands, and your
Mm-hmm.
hands are. It's not really about your future so much. It's kind of like about who you are as a person and what you're capable of.
Mm-hmm.
And kind of from seeing that, you can kind of ascertain maybe what's best for people or what they're well suited to or what they might do. But really, they're both kind of life advice in some aspect. I would say
Okay.
tarot is more predictive, it's more
Mm-hmm.
well known, and it's more um, all encompassing in that you can talk about anything with tarot cards. They'll talk about almost anything. Not so much like lottery numbers, obviously, or dead people. That's maybe a little bit more specialist, but
Yeah.
it'll respond to people
Mm-hmm.
and situations in your life, aspects of your personality, whether it be career or romance or whatever it is.
Mm-hmm.
With palmistry, it's just kind of like what you're born with, and almost like what you're born to do in a sense. Um, but I find them both really useful. I've been reading
Good.
tarot a lot longer. It's easier to learn, I would say. It's easier for people to respond to it. People seem to have a little bit of resistance to palmistry. They
Okay.
think it might be wishy washy or there's not really much in your hands. But I
Right.
think, especially over the last couple of hundred, it's become almost like scientific,
Uh-huh.
and kind of analytical, because it's physiology, really. There's so many nerves in your hands connected to your brain. It really just tells a little story about you as a person. And
Mm-hmm.
so if you kind of know yourself a little bit better, you can kind of decide what's right from you with that one. But they're very different. I do like to kind of
Mm-hmm.
mix and match, but it depends what people want.
Yeah, no, of course. And can you explain, how you sort of became interested in this? Obviously, you've been doing tarot a lot longer. How did that start? And then how did you eventually move into palmistry as well? What sort of sparked this for you?
Yeah, I mean, I started reading tarot when I was 17. So I'm 26 now, so nearly 10 years. But I had a tarot reading when I was 10. When I was 10
Oh.
years old, I went to a lady in a caravan and I got a card reading, and I kind of fell in love with it. But even before that, I feel like there's two kind of kids in the world. Like, you either love it's the kids who love Christmas and they kind of wait all year for it, or they love Halloween.
Yeah,
And I
yeah,
love
no, of
Halloween.
course. That was your
I
thing.
think Yeah, I think as well, just like when you're born. I mean, I'm looking at you right now, and you might know what I'm talking about. I don't know if that's your natural shade,
Oh,
but
it is,
even in
yeah.
Scotland, I
Ginge.
think, yeah, it's nice. I
Thanks.
think even in Scotland, when you're born different,
Mm-hmm.
if you're born redhead or you're just born like I wasn't like the other kids. Like, I didn't want to play football with the boys or whatever the girl was doing. I was very much doing my own thing,
Mm-hmm.
and I always had like a kind of interest in magical archetypes.
Mm-hmm.
I wouldn't really call myself a magician or anything like that, but it kind of led me down that road of seeking something that's different,
Mm-hmm.
and kind of unconventional. So I've been wanting to get into it like all my life,
Good.
going for readings. And then when I was 17, I think I got like a late birthday present of a
Mm-hmm.
pack of tarot cards. And they were always
Cool.
just kind of something, maybe for like 4 or 5 years, that you would just kind of pull out like as a party trick.
Uh-huh.
You do it for yourself on occasion. Maybe you're feeling down, or maybe your friend brings it up and you just
Mm-hmm.
whap them out for it. But I never really took it seriously until my early 20s.
Okay.
And that was when I was just kind of looking for a career, because I kind of dived into different things like hairdressing and catering and retail, and just nothing was working out.
Mm-hmm.
So I was in college and I was studying counseling because I thought, like, I'll try and do something nice with my life.
Mm-hmm.
And the thing about counseling is it's great.
Mm-hmm.
It's nice. You can listen to people, you can really give them validation, but you cannot give any advice. You certainly can't give predictions in counseling, but you
Mm-hmm.
can't give advice or tell people what to do with their life. And I kind of always felt that was a problem. I was like, people ask me what to do all the time. Like, they've
Mm-hmm.
always kind of gravitated towards me for that. So I just kind of dived into hard study, mainly of tarot cards for a couple of years, but that was around the time that I stumbled upon palmistry,
Okay.
which is actually like a sibling of astrology,
Mm-hmm.
because I was really looking into astrology and not so much like star signs, like you
No,
see like the horoscopes
like
in
birth
magazines.
charts and things like that.
Yeah,
Yeah,
like
I'm
birth
really
charts, like
interested in that as well. Yeah, I find it
cool.
fascinating. It was about
Yeah.
6 months ago I sort of dived down that rabbit hole, and it was fascinating. Like I had no idea it was so, like, one of the things people always say when they're talking about astrology that I find is like, oh, but how can like everyone just have one sign and everyone with that sign's the same? And it's like, but you don't understand how many aspects there are to it. Like
Yeah.
everyone's birth chart is so unique. There's so many different parts to it and stuff. Like I still obviously don't have my head around all of it because there's just so much to learn, but it's
Nobody
fascinating
does. I
to
mean,
read about.
you could live
Mm-hmm.
10 lifetimes and you would not study all of what astrology is.
Mm-hmm.
But it's when I noticed that there was a real kind of connection between that, people's
Mm-hmm.
birth chart mainly, and their hand.
Mm-hmm.
Like the shape of their
Oh, sorry.
hand, different parts of the planet, everything good.
Yeah, no, sorry, it went a bit fuzzy there for a moment, but it's fine now. But yeah, no, that's fascinating. And I noticed on the reading that you gave me, you had said like a lot of my hand was like in relation to like water signs and things like that and sensitivity and
It's
things.
very watery,
Yeah, and
yeah.
I'm a Cancer, so it makes so much sense.
Oh,
I'm a
nice.
Cancer,
Yeah.
and then my moon sign's Pisces, so it's both water
Oh,
signs, so
wow.
really
Yeah, so
watery.
that's a lot of
So
water.
so
Yeah.
yeah, definitely.
And not even just in the hand shape, you tend to find that people who are Cancerian or
Mhm.
Piscean, like you, I mean,
Mhm.
I'm Pisces, I'm a lot of Pisces, mostly Pisces in my
Uh
planets.
huh.
Both me and you have a lot of lines in our hands.
Mhm.
We might not be manual laborers, we might not be doing things with our hands a
Mhm.
lot, but we've got a lot of feelings and a lot
Mhm.
of kind of impressions in our mind, and so there's
Mhm.
a lot in the hands.
Mhm.
If you look at someone who's maybe like a laborer, who
Mhm.
maybe isn't super mentally orientated, they're just kind of laid back, they're really
Mhm.
grounded, they probably don't have a lot of lines or wrinkles or impressions in their hands,
Mhm.
because they're not as sensitive in that sense, despite using their hands more.
Mhm.
And that's always been a weird thing to me. I don't think you can explain that with science. Like
I
anyone
know
who
that
conducts
it's
a study of hands.
that's crazy. That's mental. But no, definitely like getting the reading I received and stuff like that gave me a sort of interest in it. Like palmistry is something that, like you said, like I'd never looked into it, never heard much about it and stuff like that. So I think it's really good to learn more about it and things like
And the
that.
thing is, I mean, the kind of palmistry that I do is more Western or scientific
Mhm.
and relates to astrology, but you can get so many different kinds. It's going to be very different in India if someone
Okay.
took a if a Hindu took a look at your hand there, as towards someone in China, or like the Romani travelers, the gypsies that we
Mhm.
have here in Britain. We all kind of do it differently.
Mhm.
Um, so there's no one way you can do it. Same with tarot as well. Like people have their own kind of methods, but there is a kind of general structure there that kind of
Mhm.
rings true throughout all traditions.
Mhm.
So yeah, I find it really interesting.
Yeah, no, definitely, definitely. And can you talk through how this went from being like sort of a hobby to becoming your career, and for you to make a living out of
Mm.
it, that sort of transition from it being something that you were looking into to actually, giving it your all and making a business for yourself?
Yeah, I didn't think I would
Mhm.
like actually be able to take it up full time as a professional. I've maybe been professional for a couple of years now, but
Mhm.
only a year full time.
Mhm.
And when I first started out adding it to my business, I was actually going to be a massage therapist. Like I was
Oh
studying
wow.
holistic therapy, and it just
Mhm.
didn't work out. Like I kind of hated it, and I just thought I'm gonna have to have something, because
Mhm.
everyone told me, like even my mom, like she was like, you're not gonna like make it full time as a tarot reader. Like
Mhm.
there's no opportunities here for that. Like you don't have a shop, you don't have this, you don't have that. And so it was kind of intimidating to actually go for it full time as a business. Like
Mhm.
I always thought it would be a sideline for me.
Mhm.
But after I left college and I'd done a bit of studying with counseling and holistic therapy, an opportunity just like arose for me where I have. I'm only there 6 or 7 months out of the year, like the sunny months, but I have a little stall in the meadows
Oh,
in
lovely.
Edinburgh. Like if anyone's ever been, it's just like the big plains of grass. There's a lot of
Uh huh.
traffic through there. And I just kind of dived right into it, and more opportunities seemed to just kind of follow.
Mhm.
Um, I didn't think it would kind of blossom the way it has, but I'm really glad that it did. Obviously, things have changed now with quarantine.
Yeah, yeah, no, of course. I was actually going to ask about that. I mean, how have you found? I mean, since COVID-19, it's interesting to know how people are reacting to this situation. Like, are you getting more people that are like, "Oh, I need guidance. I need some advice and things like that, or have you found it decrease? I mean, how's your business been going since this all started?
It's kind of hard to say because I mean it hasn't been too long. I mean it's only been like a month or maybe two now where we've been really kind of affected where I've had to shut down physically and I can't work in the shop that I'm at anymore and do readings there.
Mm-hmm.
I've also just been a little bit maybe lazy or resistant because I kind of hated the idea of online
Mm-hmm.
readings. I always found it like a little bit. I'm quite romantic in the sense that I love the idea of antique kind of fortune telly stalls like in
Oh,
person, and there's something
yeah.
about like talking to someone or seeing like a picture of a hand through a screen where there's a missing element.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of going back to the thing where like you don't really get the counseling element. Not that I'm a counselor and I'm not a psychologist, but we do kind of wear that hat sometimes when we're
Mm-hmm.
seeing people in person. We're holding space for them. You know, one
Mm-hmm.
person might see it more as entertainment, and you have to have a bit of charisma and showmanship.
Mm-hmm.
The next person might really, want a private session with you and need some validation.
Mm-hmm.
So doing it through the screen has been less personal. I would
Okay.
say the demand is still there. There are more people who want it, but people want to spend less money on it because they're facing their own kind of stuff. They're having to
Mm-hmm.
adapt their own business, or they've lost their job, or
Mm-hmm.
things are just difficult to buy now. So
Mm-hmm.
it's definitely changed my perspective. I didn't even know if I could do online readings
Mm-hmm.
until I had to. Like I kind of just thought, well, I'm not gonna like sit doing nothing all this time.
Mm-hmm.
Like I still feel like I've got something to offer. So I just kind of tried out a few times and feedback was all great. And I was like, this still isn't really how ideal for me.
Mm-hmm.
But, at least it kind of opens things up globally. I'm
Yeah.
not just seeing people in Edinburgh or Glasgow.
Mm-hmm. You're
Yeah.
expanded your network and just making the best of a
Yeah.
bad situation and things
Yeah,
for the
I
time
think
being.
I will expand more online. I've
Mm-hmm.
just been a little bit lazy given the nice weather. Like I've just kind of thought, like I'll just go walking in the woods where there's
Yeah.
no people. But I'll kind of focus online a little
Yeah.
bit more. My next thing I kind of want to take with it is actually writing,
Oh,
just
really?
because there's some books that I wish existed.
Oh.
For example, like a book on astral palmistry, like comparing people's hands with birth charts, just like a written kind of study. It's not out there, it doesn't exist. There are
Wow.
thousands of books on palmistry, but that doesn't exist
Yeah, that
despite
link.
these two being recognized as kind of like
Mm-hmm.
sibling systems for thousands of years.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know any books on it.
Linking the two
So I'd like
together.
to write one. I've
Oh
got
no.
the time now.
Oh, good for
Yeah.
you. No, that definitely sounds good. I'd read that. Like, totally fascinated with astrology, and now palmistry. I'm finding it really interesting too. One thing that people always like to hear, and I'm sure you get asked a lot, is do you have any strange stories? Obviously, without naming names and keeping clients
Yeah.
anonymous. Any sort of weird experiences you've had, or things that have happened that have been a bit surreal? I mean, have you got any of those that you
Yeah.
could expand on?
I always do keep things confidential
Mm-hmm.
because I mean, again, it kind of I hate to like compare it so much, but like you really do have to abide by the same rules as a counselor or a
Absolutely.
doctor
Mm-hmm.
or a priest, maybe like for confession, because
Mm-hmm.
like people will unload a lot of stuff on you,
Mm-hmm.
and it can be quite jarring stuff sometimes. Like you have to be prepared. You never know who's going to walk in the door and what they're going to say.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I wouldn't say that what freaks me out is or surprises me is what normal people who don't do this would think of
Yeah.
being surprising because when I'm reading for someone and they say, "Oh, that's right. How did you know that?" Like, "Yes, my dad died at this age," or "Yes, that's what I do for a living." Like, that's not amazing to me. That doesn't shock me anymore.
Mm-hmm.
What does kind of shock me is for some people, like the things that they will ask and the things that they think are okay to ask. And I
Mm-hmm.
try to have compassion for everyone. I remember this was only last year. I remember someone came to me, and of course, not naming names, but it was not who you would think it would be. It was a woman, kind of close to middle age, but still pretty young.
Mm-hmm.
And she had admitted to had admitted to me that she was being taken to court for a case of stalking, because she
Wow.
broke her injunction. She was told to stay away from someone, and she wouldn't. And she kind of came to me seeking counsel on because she wasn't in her right mind. Like she fully believed that this person was in love with her, despite this person saying, "I'm taking you to court." And she wanted my advice and prediction on A, how would the court case go, and B, how can she make them stop behaving like that?
Uh-huh.
And it's
Wow.
it's quite a sad situation. Like it's not something that I found super scary. I did feel bad more than anything else because you kind of
Uh-huh.
have to be there and bring this person back down to
Yeah.
reality. I think a lot of people think what tarot readers do or what palm readers do is just make up a bunch of stuff and
Yeah.
like give people false hope and all this kind of stuff. But the reality is we have to tell people some pretty harsh truths.
Yeah, and a lot of personal
And
stuff as well, and things that
yeah,
people
and
don't talk about every
kind of
day.
sit with people through their darkest times or their deepest shadows. Like,
Mm-hmm.
and that's honestly like what interests me the most.
Mm-hmm.
I think it always kind of has when you're kind of othered in life, like you're always kind of seeking to bring people back to their own state of consciousness.
Mm-hmm.
So it's weird to me when people come asking about illegal stuff.
And you have to be
um,
like, no, don't do that. uh,
Especially if their profession is illegal or it concerns money. I mean, obviously, I just can't speak to anyone in regards to like abuse or assault, and people will
yeah.
come. I've had men come to me. Mainly because it's just a woman never has. Men have come to me and said, you know, this is what she's saying I've done to her. This is what I've actually done to her. Like, how's it gonna go?
Oh
Like,
wow.
she's the mother of my child, kind of thing. And like, what are you meant to say in that situation?
I
Nobody
know.
knows. I don't even feel it's right to pull a few cards on
Uh-huh.
that.
Yeah.
So that can be quite jarring.
Yeah.
I mean, at other times it's just kind of funny. You know, like people often come with like crazy career
Mm-hmm.
expectations, and sometimes that's being a drug lord or
Wow.
just you know stealing and stuff. And
Uh-huh.
I'm like, I can't help you with that. It's not your right path. It's
Oh
not what I'm gonna do.
dear. Yeah.
So
So in those tricky
yeah,
circumstances, do you find that you've actually had to turn people away? Is there times where you've had to say, do you know what, I can't give you a
yeah.
reading? Or how do you approach that? Do you feel like,
Yeah, I mean, it comes in all sorts of forms. I don't refuse a lot of people. I try to give
mm,
everyone the time of day because you didn't you're not in their situation, and even if they're asking something that's pretty audacious or outlandish or
mm,
just what you would think is wrong, it's best to kind of sit with them and try and work through it to something that's maybe better for them. But I have had to turn people away for, um, I guess, not so much being rude, but more for putting me in a precarious position,
mm,
asking me questions that kind of put some responsibility on me with something to do with their life, and I'm like, I can't tell you what to do in that situation.
mm,
um, I think as long as you always approach it with calmness. I've never actually really had any. I've seen probably like a couple thousand clients in person, but I've
oh
never
wow.
had anyone be super aggressive in person.
Oh,
It's always online. It's always
okay.
someone who
Hiding behind
calls,
the
you know, like,
screen, yeah.
yeah, like keyboard gangsters. I get a lot of that. And it's usually always the same type of person. Like
Mm,
I hate to like shit on men right now, but it's usually like middle-aged white men who just don't believe in any kind of spiritual realm or
mm,
religious realm, and they just, you know, they just see you as a con artist, and what can you do? Like, it's not, I'm
mm,
not here to change people's opinions. Like, they can think what they want, and
mm,
I don't really rise to abuse or judgment. Like, for me, it's sad for them because they're missing out on something that could really open their mind or
mm,
even benefit their life in a practical way.
mm.
So, yeah, I never feel the need to justify myself too much to people.
Good.
Most of the time, everything's pretty great anyway, you know.
Good.
People aren't as bad as you might think.
That's
For the
good.
most part.
That's good to hear. And I suppose what would be quite interested in hearing is, I mean, are you, since when you started your interest in tarot and palmistry, do you think overall you're seeing more and more people become open minded to it? I mean, how do you see things going for the
Yeah.
future? Is it more optimistic for you, or do you think people are getting more cynical? I mean, what's your thoughts?
I think there's actually been of an explosion, a bit of an explosion in terms of people who actually want to do this,
Mm-hmm.
who want to be a tarot reader, want to be some kind of reader, want to work that way.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think that everyone who goes out and buys a tarot card deck on a whim is going to like commit to that. I
Mm-hmm.
do think that people, especially with like the younger generation, we're kind of moving into that age of Aquarius kind of thing. People are becoming more liberal,
Mm-hmm.
but some people are also becoming more pensive and conservative. So I think there's going to be more contrast. Not
Okay.
necessarily like things are going to become a bit easier or a bit worse, but there's just going to be more divide among it.
Okay.
But certainly in Edinburgh, in the place where I usually work on weekdays and do palm readings, uh, I've always thought of Edinburgh as a really magical place with kind of like a beautiful history, and you know,
Mm.
it's kind of like ancient Celtic land. The little shop where I work, Black Moon Botanica, which is closed currently for
Oh
COVID-19,
no.
it's become like a little hub of people to gather. whether it's just people who are interested in tarot or spiritualism or paganism or just like kind of funky witches. I do think that it's going to grow as a community in Edinburgh and probably everywhere else as well, which is good.
Yeah.
I don't see a lot of palmistry in Scotland.
Okay.
I know 4 palm readers in Scotland. One of them's a friend, well, 2 of them is a friend of mine. One of them I think is completely fraudulent. And
Oh.
again, it's kind of nice because it gives me a niche. It's like, hi, I'm the palm reader for like miles around,
Yeah.
but it also leaves a lot of misunderstanding about it. So yeah, in a way, I wish it was more popular, but I do
It
like that
does
it's a
work to your
special.
advantage too, yeah.
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 I
I
have to
see.
capitalize on something.
And obviously you mentioned there that there's another fraudulent palm reader there too. I'd be quite curious to know sort of overall, like myself, I've met with quite a few psychics over my time. It's something I've always been interested in and things like that. And one thing I do make an effort to ask is, and I'm sure people watching this will want to know, I mean, overall in your industry, do you see a lot of people that are fraudulent, or would you say 90% of people are genuine? I mean, how do you think the industry is sort of split and made up in that sense?
It's hard to gauge, and I do think it's kind of different all over the world. Like, I think if you go to America and like New York City, that's like, if you see a psychic parlor there, then I'd probably just stay away. Like, I've
Okay.
never been there, but definitely regions have like kind of different levels of honesty and kind of fraudulent activity. From my experience and like the people that I've spoken to, I think most people are kind of genuine and that they're trying to be something or they're trying to give something. But whether or not it's of any value to you is kind of individual. I can't say that I'm going to give like an amazing reading to everyone that comes to me for the rest of my life because it's just not the way it works. You're always going to run into difficulties. I think as long as you're getting a good response most of the time, then you can present yourself as a pretty reliable reader. In Scotland specifically, I I'm actually not a fan of mediumship. Not that I'm against people doing it or going to it, but it's just not something I would ever indulge in. And it's not something that I've ever found people to be particularly good at. And I think that's a real kind of different realm of where you have to be very careful with people who are kind of grieving for loved ones. Because I don't predict death. I only give advice and predictions on life.
Okay.
I did mention, there was a kind of fraudulent palm reader in Scotland, and I do believe that she's full of shit, but she might also believe her own shit. Like, I don't know. I don't know
Yeah.
her personally.
And what's going on
So,
inside that person's
yeah.
head. And just to clarify, mediumship, just because I know there's obviously loads of different types and things like that. Mediumship, is that the communication with the dead?
Yeah,
Okay.
it's more of it's spiritualism or psychic reading.
Okay.
I really think of what I do as more practical and almost logical because I've got quite an analytical mind. I see palmistry, purely as physiology and psychology in the hand, but it also has this connection to astrology, which I can't explain. With tarot, I think the cards are literally designed to represent the human experience, and if you trust in your subconscious whenever you're shuffling or pulling cards, something's going to come up to help you because the human brain's quite amazing and extensive in what it can do. In terms of mediumship and all that, it's just not something that I've found super beneficial for a lot of people. I know a lot of people will, and I know a lot of people get closure and like they feel some kind of connection. But I think that's more of like a risky area, especially in terms of fraudulence.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that's where people become easy targets,
Okay.
if you like.
Yeah, no, that's
But
fair enough. And yeah, and on that note, I mean, in terms of palmistry and tarot, is it something that you feel like anybody can pick up and anybody can learn, or?
kind of, yeah. I
Yeah.
mean, I'm not going to say that everybody has the capacity because the reality is some people just aren't going to do it. They wouldn't want to do it. And I do think you have to have a kind of certain drive to do either one. I would say it's harder to give a good palm reading only because I think a lot of traditional palm reading systems are not super accurate. I'm a real big fan of the kind of more modern scientific approach that bleeds into chirology and hand analysis, and I find that to be super accurate. In terms of tarot, sorry, what was your question again? It just kind of went on a little
No,
tangent
if
in my
you
head.
if you think if everybody could pick
Oh,
this
if
up or
anyone can,
could
yeah.
learn.
In terms of tarot is much easier. Palmistry is harder. Tarot is easy because you can kind of look at the cards, and although you might not know what everyone means, if I show you this card here, like a heart stabbed with swords, like you're gonna know
It's
that
quite
something's
symbolic
like
and
not
yeah,
quite right there. Yeah.
yeah.
Seem to be pulling all the dramatic ones. Or if I pull like a card of like a wedding scene, like you're gonna kind of grasp it because it's pictorial.
Yeah.
But it's much harder to grasp information that's quite fine in detail. I mean, even if you look, I remember your hands. If you look at your hands, your lines are quite light. Like it's quite difficult to see detail there. Like you might want to get like a magnifying glass or something. But with tarot, people are very responsive to visuals, and also it's just done a lot more. There's a lot more courses and books out there. A lot more people talk about it. People feel more confident with it, and so tarot is easier to learn. Palmistry is definitely more niche and maybe a little bit more difficult to learn, but I like it. I like them both.
Good.
Yeah, I do think anyone can do it, but whether you're any good at it or not is definitely down to a natural capacity, but also how much effort you put into it. I've never been much of a book learner. I think it's good to have a kind of base knowledge of good knowledge, but practice. It's kind of like piano. Like you can read about piano as much as you want, but unless you're actually at a keyboard every day or piano every day, you're not gonna get the skill.
No, that's brilliant. And would you? I mean, I don't know if you're able to or not, but I mean, is it possible for you to talk me through the process of what you do with palmistry? Like, I show you my hands, your sort of how long it takes, and the first sort of things that you look at, and how you would sort of approach it.
Yeah, it's very different from doing it in person to doing it online, and it actually takes longer to do online, even though there's less I can offer there.
Okay.
Just because it's easier to speak than it is to type, and I do palm readings by email. Normally, what would happen if someone comes to meet me and they want a palm reading, I'll just find out which hand they're writing with first because they kind of tell different things. A lot of people will kind of simplify things and they'll say the hand you write with is the hand that's future because you're creating with that hand. The other one's your past. For me, I've never found that. I found that the hand that you write with is more about how other people see you, and the hand that you don't write with is more like your internal kind of being. They both have kind of past, present, future in them. But I always like to find out, which hand they write with, so I can kind of see differences. And the hands can be quite dramatically different. You can see someone being quite strong and put together in their writing hand that they show people, but on the inside they could be like a hot mess. Like it just might not be going well for them. So I actually examine the whole hand. Palmistry or palm reading is almost a little bit misleading because it's a hand reading. We do look at the palm, which is very famous for the lines and the mounts, but we examine fingers, fingernails, rings, like the texture, the temperature of the hand, the flexibility. Absolutely everything can tell you something about someone. And I usually just go with what interests me first. Like if someone has a big crooked finger, like just talk about that first. It's probably going to tell you a lot about the person. If someone has like a broken nail, that's probably going to be immediately relevant to them, With tarot, it's a little bit different. You could probably talk for like 20 minutes or half an hour on someone's hands, just like talking at them. They don't have to say anything because it's all in their hands. With tarot, you can just pull a bunch of cards and give someone a prediction, but I do find that it works a lot better as a kind of back and forth. Again, almost kind of like a psychic therapy in a sense, that with tarot, because it does go beyond you, it goes for people and situations in your life. I like people to have a think about what's important to them, because if they have questions, like I want to answer them. I'm not a mind reader. Sure, we can pull a few cards, but the cards, if you let the cards choose for you, it might be something you might not want to hear. So I usually say to people, like, where do you want to go with this reading? Like, do you want to talk love life or kind of career? Did you have something in mind? And in that way, they can kind of be more interactive with it. I do like to do both because palm reading is kind of a nice way to get to know someone and to know their kind of guidelines, if you like their kind of blueprint of what's been laid out for them. And then with the cards, you can be a little bit more creative. Because I can predict the future, and I wouldn't be doing this if I didn't think I had a good accuracy for that. But people can go out there and kind of change it. I think if you look at your options with the cards, like, well, I don't know if I'm going to move to. I've had this question so many times. Like, I don't know if I'm going to move to Italy or like France or something like that. You can literally see how it's going to pan out both ways. I'm going to say where I think you're going to go anyway, but it'll be up to that person to kind of
make
decide.
the final call and and things. So
Yeah,
nothing's
and
sort of
then they
set in
might come.
stone with it, and
Yeah,
yeah.
and especially with relationships, they might come back like a year later and been like, "Oh, I know you said it wouldn't work out, but I really tried to make it work, and we're separated now for 2 months." And I'm like, "I know, I know you are." But they had to go through that, and there's no
Uh-huh.
right and wrong answer there. Um, I've never judged someone for not taking my advice or not paying attention to a prediction, because it does kind of make you who you are in a sense. And the tarot, palmistry, whatever it is, it's just there to reflect who you are, so you can make better life choices for yourself, really. I think that's where a lot of skeptics come in, and they talk about the, what's it called, like a self-manifesting prophecy. Like if you
Yes,
tell
I've
someone
heard
something.
that a lot. Yeah, whenever I tell stories about like, oh, so I got this tarot reading, they said this would happen, and then it happened. My boyfriend actually just the other night, it was I seen a psychic when I was 17. I got a tarot reading from this lady called Margaret Nash. I'm not sure if you've heard of her, but yeah, I think she's quite well known in things.
Cool.
When I was 17, I was just in the process of applying for university. I hadn't got in yet. And she told me that I was going to get an offer for university, and then at the last minute I was going to decide it wasn't for me and I didn't want to go to university. Now that's exactly how it panned out. Like at the last minute I was like, do you know what, I don't want this. Like I've just rushed into something because I felt under pressure to like apply for
Yeah.
something. So I've just like applied for anything and then been like, right, that's me. So I changed my mind. And I was telling my boyfriend about that the other night, and he goes, "But do you not think maybe because she said that, that's why?" I was like, "No, like I didn't want to go to university. That's the point. I didn't not go to university because that psychic lady told me that I wouldn't go to university. Do you know what I mean?"
I do actually believe in self-manifesting prophecy,
Mm-hmm.
and it's actually part of the reason of what I do, because
Mm-hmm.
I think like it's your choice at the end of the day.
Mm-hmm.
Like if you recognize that self-manifesting prophecies have that much power over
Mm-hmm.
you, why not see your options played out on the table and
Mm-hmm.
then decide what one's best for you based on
Mm-hmm.
the cards?
Mm-hmm.
Um, Often it doesn't. Often people kind of go against the grain, despite, because it's our human nature. Like we
Mm-hmm.
we we do the opposite of what we're kind of told a lot of the time.
Yeah.
But I think it can be really quite useful to recognize it, because I've got quite a skeptical mind.
Really.
Um, but yeah, it's
Uh-huh.
it's useful. And if you didn't go to uni, that's great, because I think young people just are kind of forced into it. Like I see
Yeah.
that problem all the time in readings. People come and they don't know, but they want to make their
Mm-hmm.
family proud, and it's what their family want for them, but they don't know what they want because they're 17.
Yeah, no, absolutely. That was me in that situation, and I'm still
Yeah.
like I'm 23 now, and I'm so glad I didn't go. Like I definitely made the right decision and things.
I would
Um.
say, like most people, in my experience, especially in terms of education and
Mhm.
career, which in palmistry we relate to Saturn, like the middle finger and that
Mhm.
big line in the middle of your hand. Most people don't know what they want to do with their life until
Mhm.
after their Saturn return, which is kind of age 28 to 30, and that's usually a really difficult time. And they usually know what to do after that time because they've been jarred by Saturn. They've been shown a difficult time. They've been pushed away from what they thought they were going to do,
Mhm.
and just onto something that means a little bit more to them. So I think it's ridiculous when people leave school and they're made to decide on a career. Like I'm
Mhm.
25, and it just happened for me when I turned 25,
Yeah.
and that was great, but I think that's early.
Yeah, no, that definitely makes sense. So I
Yeah.
suppose a couple of points just to sort of finish off. Anybody who's watching this who's quite interested in doing some reading after and looking into palmistry or tarot themselves. I mean, do you have any websites you recommend? Any books you recommend, or anything like that?
There's so much online, which is amazing.
Mhm.
Something that people might find actually useful, just because I've never been a person to really learn from books or really
Mhm.
read websites. Like I hate reading on a computer screen. I like to have a
Mhm.
book in front of me.
Mhm.
But I do think that people probably don't know that there's groups on Facebook, especially for tarot. Not so much with palmistry, because I mean, there is, but it's mainly like people in India, and you might have a hard time
Mhm.
communicating there. But with tarot, there are so many different Facebook groups with thousands of members, who are just there to kind of offer advice based on like which cards do you buy, what books do you like, how do you read, like what spreads, what kind of style.
Mhm.
I find that really kind of useful. Palmistry is harder, because again, like I think there's a lot of crappy material out there. But my favorite book in the world, and people might not want to buy it because it's so big, is The Art and Science of Hand Reading.
Okay.
It's kind of like a compendium of palmistry, and It's kind of like my Bible, honestly. It's about 500 pages and everything that I've ever found in it. And there's a lot of detail from fingerprints to fingernails to lines to the shape of your hand. Everything in it is just detailed with incredible accuracy.
Hmm.
I don't think I'd have a career without that book, actually. So I'm really grateful to Ellen Goldberg. For tarot, like you can get any book you want. There's a lot of classics. A lot of people have written on it. If you just want a compendium, like a big chunky book, Holistic Tarot by Benawel Wen is really, really good.
Right.
But I would always say just like go with what feels right. Like if you
Hmm.
feel like you're a book learner and you want to get a bunch of books and just read kind of about different traditions and different styles, great. Again, a lot of it's free online. I'm just not a fan of reading stuff off of a computer screen. So,
That's fair enough.
um, but again, get something to get yourself like a base knowledge in what you want to do, and
Hmm.
then practice. Because that's for me, I've learned far more just from experience by looking at people's hands.
Hmm.
And maybe you don't want to like charge money right away, but just ask people. If you have like a kind of idea about what something means in someone's hand, it may be a rough age, just ask them. Be like,
Hmm.
I'm learning this, you know,
Hmm.
because people are quite receptive to that.
Okay, okay, brilliant. And where can people go if they're interested in getting a reading from you?
It's online right now. Until COVID-19 ends, I'll probably just be doing readings online. I'm probably going to have to make a website, but if you search Fortune by Kalem,
Okay.
Fortune by Kalem on Instagram or Facebook,
Hmm.
people can kind of book through that. Palm readings are always by email. I do need pictures of people's hands, to be able to read their palm.
Yeah.
With tarot, it's kind of cool because you can actually just do it over like Facebook chat or
Hmm.
Instagram chat or even WhatsApp. Like I
Hmm.
do kind of like to have a back and forth with that one because it's a little bit more extensive rather than me just spewing information about your hands in an email.
Hmm.
But yeah, either
Okay.
way, in terms of when the pandemic ends, I have like a few locations and I do travel for readings. Mainly, I'm in the meadows of Edinburgh, like in a little
Hmm.
stall at the Pavilion Cafe, six
Hmm.
months of the year. Should be there now, but I'm not. Should be there April till Halloween.
Oh.
All year though, I'm at Black Moon Botanica on Candlemaker Road. Don't know if you've ever been there. It's
I've
like a little
not been
witch
there,
doctor.
no.
Oh,
But
you'll need to go.
I'm intrigued by the title. It sounds
Yeah,
like quite
so
an
it's
interesting
uh,
place.
it's my friend Brooke that owns it, and she's quite amazing. She opened it last May, and she's a candle maker. She
Oh
makes
wow.
scented candles, and
Hmm.
they are the best candles I've ever had. But Black Moon Botanica is on Candle Maker Row, so she's kind of bringing like a traditional thing back to the center of Edinburgh, back to the street.
Oh.
And it is a witchcraft store, like it's Black Moon Botanica. They
Hmm.
sell herbs and crystals and everything you could want, tarot
Hmm.
decks. But the candles are kind of a centerpiece. And I'm usually there weekdays when the
Okay.
world is turning and there's not a pandemic, but not right now.
Okay.
Yeah.
No, that's brilliant. Well, thank you so much for coming on and things. I really, really appreciate it. And it's been a pleasure talking with you. Is there anything that I've not asked or not covered that you'd like to say or speak about?
Mm, I do think like just for anyone that's interested, just because like it's not something that's known about, and when people think they know about it, they know a kind of myth, like the history
Mm-hmm.
of either tarot and palmistry, because they're very, very different. Palmistry itself has been around for there's no way to know how long, but thousands of years. Like our oldest record is about 4,000 years old,
Wow.
and that's from India. We do
Mm-hmm.
think it started in India in the kind of the Vedic texts, which are ancient Hindu writings,
Mm-hmm.
the oldest religious writings in the world. And back then, the instructions that were written were for monks, the Hindu monks, to not read palms for money. So we can know that even 4,000 years ago, people were doing palm readings for money. So we can assume that it's been around for long enough to become a profession.
Yeah.
Um, Probably for as long as people have been interested in the stars, because a lot of people wouldn't take long to kind of make the connection.
Mm-hmm.
Tarot is different. Tarot is probably, in my opinion, because people do differ, it's probably only been used for fortune telling or divination for 300-400 years. I
Okay.
think the earliest decks that we find are kind of like in Italy, maybe in the 13th or 14th centuries. But before that, we might have had playing card reading as well, which is like another tradition that's been around for maybe like 1,000 years.
Mm-hmm.
But cards have really only become popular, I would say, over the last couple hundred years. Palmistry's been going for thousands of years.
Ancient. Wow.
Just if people wanted to know, like, how old are they? I
Yeah,
think a lot of
no.
people just assume they came from Egypt with the Romanis or the Gypsies, and
Oh.
truly, I think they love to say that about themselves, but they didn't.
Just a
It's
myth.
not what history says.
Yeah, no, that's very interesting. Thank you for that. Anything else you want to cover, or do you think that's us?
Just in case people were like interested in what we were talking about with astrology charts, I
Mm-hmm.
don't think people know that they can get it free online.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah. What the website would you recommend? I can't remember the one I used, but
I try out like a few different ones. I've got one saved in my phone, so I'm not quite sure what it's called. But
mm-hmm.
if you type in birth chart
Mm-hmm.
calculator to Google, most of the ones that will come up are Placidus system, which is just, I guess, like a system of interpreting the houses. I'm not an astrologer, so if I'm getting that wrong, like, sorry. I use whole sign or whole house system, so I would recommend typing that in. I just find it a lot more accurate in terms of the
Mm-hmm.
house placements. But yeah, it's free online. Like, you can find out more than your sun sign or star sign. You can find out all your planets and houses and asteroids,
Mm-hmm.
and just study it for the rest of your life because it's quite extensive. I would say if you're looking for something like a little bit more uh, easy, then palmistry is more like at your fingertips in that
Mm-hmm.
sense. But the two are very interconnected, and
Mm-hmm.
over the last kind of 150 years, tarot and astrology have become very interconnected.
Mm-hmm.
The four suits, the four elements, and just
Mm-hmm.
astrological associations with the cards. It's just a good thing to study if you're interested in any of it.
Yeah, no, brilliant. That's really useful. Well, thank you so much again. It's
Sure.
been lovely. And you've been brilliant. That's
Hope